This morning, I heard a term that I'd never heard before, and maybe you've heard it recently as well. Quiet quitting. And my initial reaction when I heard this was, what? This sounds like an extremely dangerous idea. But before I spoke up and gave my opinion, I wanted to know more. So I dug into it to find out what was going on. And from the best I can tell, this is a group of folks who want more work-life balance and to avoid any occupational burnout. And they're going to accomplish those goals by doing two things. One, doing exactly what the job requires, no more and no less. And two, only working in specific defined work times. Again, no more work, no less work, just these hours and that's it. And while these ideas seem reasonable on the surface, I believe they have some dangerous undertones for both individuals and our society at large. I think the idea of quiet quitting on a mass scale promotes a culture of victimhood. And here's what I mean by that. I think it quietly supports coasting and hiding and deferring responsibility if a task or project is not specifically within a job description. It quietly supports not speaking up, not creating waves, and not making a ruckus. It quietly supports collecting a paycheck for as long as possible and attempting to walk the tightrope of doing the bare minimum without getting canned. It quietly supports wasting work hours on social media or on personal hobbies or watching YouTube instead of being productive. But here's the problem with this tactic is how many employers will put up with this? How many bosses will accept an employee when they push back on a new assignment because, hey, sorry boss, it's not specifically in my job description? Sometimes a business, it needs all hands on deck because emergencies happen. And sometimes you got to step outside your specific lanes of responsibility as a worker, right? That's how successful business operate. Cross-departmental collaboration and workers leaning in when it matters, not being passive. Instead, quiet quitting creates hard boundaries and silos between departments within a business. And it also creates more interdepartmental blame shifting and petty arguments instead of less. If everybody adopts this attitude, it's going to create a less engaged workforce, and it'll force more bureaucracy within businesses, which means reduced productivity, which will eventually equal more expensive goods, longer lead times. It can even mean more shortages. All of these things that fan the flames of inflation. And to combat this, smart businesses, well, they'll start making job descriptions more vague, right? So vague that you won't really have a good sense of what your job is and isn't. I mean, job descriptions will start ending with phrases like, plus anything your boss deems important. And if that becomes your job description, how are you going to push back on any reasonable task your boss assigns? You're not. All this reminds me of something that John Kennedy once said to kind of combat these kind of dangerous ideas. He once said, quote,
"Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country."
Now, of course, he was talking about countries and not businesses, but I feel like that's in the same idea. It's in the same category. And was this not an attempt to remind folks that leaning in and working hard are worthwhile virtues? Not sitting back, not always demanding what's in it for me before putting forth any effort. To me, quiet quitting also reminds me of people who try to work harder to get out of work than to just get the job done. My kids, and I think all kids, do this from time to time. They push back. And I'll be honest, sometimes I feel that way as well. But over the years, I've discovered that the hardest part of any job or task is getting started. Even if a task feels super daunting, it often goes by pretty quick once you roll up your sleeves and you get to work. I'm sorry, but I just can't support a philosophy that embraces doing the bare minimum. I think it's dishonest. It's fake. And while it might feel like and seem like you're sticking it to the man, in the long run, you're actually hurting yourself. I think if your only recourse in a job is to quiet quitting, you should look for a new job. You need to find something that inspires you to get out of bed in the morning, to contribute to the world in a meaningful way, to feel like making a ruckus by sharing your gifts and talents with the world, not to hide behind a job description. Because if you're quiet quitting, you're probably lacking some much needed inspiration in your life. Now, before I get attacked by those who don't agree with me, I want to share a quick story. You see, I'm not completely unfamiliar with lacking inspiration at my job. I had similar feelings when I worked for a major food company for 10 years. Towards the end of it, I was burnt out, I was frustrated, and as the maintenance manager, it was one hell of a thankless job. Why? Well, because when I discovered a major problem and I fixed it before the machines broke, no one knew, no one cared, I didn't get a pat on the back. But if you didn't catch something and it broke during a production run, oh boy, I heard about that and I got blamed for every minute of factory downtime. So the only attention I got was when it was a negative sort of attention. It was sort of the nature of the job. And heck, my coworkers, they even knew it. They jokingly called me the blame and that was my real title. So after a few years, I felt I needed to get out. But the money was too good to just up and quit. So instead, I worked nights and I worked weekends over several years building websites and doing side hustles to work my ass off to generate a separate income. And that became a passion for me. I was able to transition from one career to another career without taking a massive financial hit. But the truth was, the final year as maintenance manager, I was coasting. I was sort of quiet quitting, I suppose. But here's the difference. I wasn't doing it forever. I had a plan. Quiet quitting wasn't something I was proud of or something I was trying to do for as long as possible. I was transitioning and I was seeking passion elsewhere. Because if you choose to live long term in a quiet quitting type of attitude, I think it's just soul sucking. I wasn't happy when I was doing it. I didn't feel great. I can't imagine living like that for years with no escape. To just show up and punch the clock with no real passion, it's a fraudulent way to live. I think it's slowly dying a little bit every single day. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should always go above and beyond for an employer every single day if they're not compensating you for it at some point. There are terrible employers and there are abusive bosses who exploit their workforce. And if you're in such a situation, you should figure a way to get out. If you can't take the financial hit, then find a way to transition out over time, right? We all need hope. Get some new skills, work some new side hustles. Yes, there are lots of situations where workers need more work-life balance. But if your employer and your boss are reasonable, which are most companies and most bosses, and you don't feel an intense desire to leave, then usually those who get ahead long-term put forth a little bit of extra effort by leaning in, by making a good ruckus, by growing your circle of influence and becoming a linchpin. Seth Godin, who's one of my influential inspirations, living a life where you're putting your art and your talents and your skills out there in the world. Well, he wrote a book called Linchpins a few years back, and I want to share a few quotes from it now. Quote, "If you need to conceal your true nature to get in the door, understand that you'll probably have to conceal your true nature to keep that job." End quote. See, concealing your true nature sure sounds a lot like quiet quitting to me. Here's another quote. "The only way to get what you're worth is to stand out, to exert emotional labor, to be seen as indispensable, and to produce interactions that organizations and people care deeply about." End quote. Again, quiet quitting is the opposite of standing out or exerting emotional labor. So I suggest you figure out if the company you work for has a history of rewarding extra effort. If they do, lean in. Don't be passive. Because to me, that's what quiet quitting symbolizes. Living a passive, fragile life. It sounds a lot like living a life of quiet desperation instead of one full of inspiration. And if that is what quiet quitting means, don't fall for it. It's a trap. That's how you end up being part of a group of people I call the fragile masses. People who believe that more comfort and easier living are the holy grail to fulfillment and happiness. But that's a life lie. And Seth Godin agrees with me on this. Quote, "The road to comfort is crowded, and it rarely gets you there. Ironically, it's those who seek out discomfort that are able to make a difference and find their footing." End quote. I couldn't agree more. In our modern society, most folks no longer have to live a strenuous, difficult life. For example, we no longer have to work the land with our blood, sweat, and tears to grow enough food for the winter. We no longer have to chop firewood all year long to keep our homes warm and safe. Nope. Instead, for the most part, we live in an era of widespread comfort and luxury and ease. But all this comfort, this luxury and ease, well, they have dangerous consequences. Without real life challenges, your mind, your spirit, your body, they begin to slowly atrophy. You fail to improve, your relationships suffer, and your spirit deteriorates. The modern human tends to conjure up silly first world problems instead of appreciating all the insane luxury we have around us. And I'm not talking about extreme luxuries here, such as yachts and calamari. I'm talking about the modern and standard American wonders of indoor plumbing, high-speed transportation, internet access, and air conditioning. Today, most people do anything in their power to avoid even mild discomforts. For example, people will circle the parking lot for 10 minutes to find a spot right next to the building, instead of parking where healthy people, resilient people park, in the back. They're driven by a need to avoid any challenge and to take the easy path whenever possible. They're the people who decide to ride the elevator to their Stairmaster class and then ride home on their shiny motorized sofa to gorge themselves on endless buffet of mind-numbing streamed content while laying across their memory foam beds. Is that good? Are we all happier because of it? Is this what success looks like? Because I believe whenever something's gained, something else is lost. For example, I'm sure you heard the old saying, use it or lose it. It's really as simple as that. If you don't have a purpose in your life and you choose not to hone your God-given talents or challenge yourself daily, what do you become? Usually you become overweight, lazy, depressed, lonely, sick, selfish, entitled, and envious of others. Does that sound familiar? To me, that sounds a lot like modern society. And it also reminds me of the idea of quiet quitting. Because I believe if more comfort and more luxury and more ease were the answers to our happiness, we'd all be in a constant state of euphoric delight with shit-eating grins plastered from ear to ear across our faces, right? But why does it seem like the more luxury and comfort we have, the more miserable we've all become? What the hell's going on? Well, I believe comfort and luxury are modern day diseases. They undermine our basic need for purposeful struggle and meaningful hardships. Humans need these things to thrive. If we don't have any real challenges as a part of our daily routine, we invent silly first world problems to replace them. For example, before the advent of modern technologies such as indoor plumbing and temperature-controlled rooms, 24-hour news, washing machines, dishwashers, automatic garage doors, and electricity, people didn't have time to wallow in their own self-pity. People didn't have the option of quiet quitting their jobs. Back then, if you decided to take a personal self-pity day off, you very well could starve or die of hypothermia. Life was harder, no doubt. Every family member had chores, and not meaningless tasks, but ones that truly mattered. The feeling of contribution and accomplishment, well, it was alive and well for everyone who lived that kind of frontier lifestyle. There was always firewood to chop and livestock to feed and cows to milk. There were gardens to tend to and fish to catch and roofs to fix and cellars to stock and animals to hunt, meat to smoke, and so on. The fragile masses of today's society, they reject all difficult activities. They see such tasks as beneath them, no longer necessary, and way too much work. But they don't think twice about spending hours in climate-controlled gyms to burn off excess calories from their latest fast food binge. But I think there's a different way to live, a better philosophy to adopt. Instead of focusing all your efforts on more comfort and more luxuries and quiet quitting and being fragile, you should flip the script to start accepting more meaningful challenge in your life. Focus on becoming better and stronger and a more resilient human. People who do this are the opposite of the fragile masses. They're the resilient few. The resilient few appreciate the fact that we no longer need to chop wood, plant backyard gardens, hunt, or forage to survive, but sometimes we challenge ourselves and we do these types of tasks anyway. Why? Because we welcome the challenge and the resiliency such activities provide. The resilient few, we crave more responsibility. It's in our DNA to prepare, adapt, and overcome to all of life's struggles. It gives us a real reason to get up in the morning with excitement and anticipation. And at the end of the day, doing so gives us an abundant sense of accomplishment. Because I don't know any feeling that's better than hitting the pillow exhausted, yet overwhelmed with pride and satisfaction. Now, the resilient life is not trying to undermine progress and technological advancements. I'm not suggesting we all start buying washboards to do our laundry or throw out our toilets in favor of outhouses. The point is not to reject all human advancements, because I believe much of this progress is excellent and it should be used with extreme gratitude. However, focusing on living a resilient life reminds us that happiness is not found in doing less, but finding a reason and a purpose to do more, to focus your life on something that matters. And what could matter more than making you and your family more resilient to life's ups and downs? Our forefathers and ancestors, they were often forced to focus on their survival efforts. They didn't need a reminder to live a resilient life. They either did so or they died. But we do. In today's distracted culture, we must now actively swim against the lazy current. We must educate ourselves that going with the flow won't make you happier, but it will make you more fragile. And that's what extreme comfort and luxury breeds: fragility. Let me ask you something. Do these sound like traits of someone who's fragile? Overweight, tired, lazy, depressed, lonely, sick, selfish, envious. Yes, they do. But what about these traits? Fit, energized, busy, fulfilled, friendly, healthy, caring, giving, grateful, kind. Well, to me, that sounds like someone who's confident and resilient. So to live a better life in today's modern society, we need a new goal. We need real challenge in our lives, something to replace the desire for mere comfort and more stuff. That's why I created a program called The Resilient Life. Built the Resilient Life from the ground up, and is rooted entirely in giving you both a roadmap and motivation to become more resilient. The roadmap includes both weekly challenges and success badges. And as you complete these challenges and you meet your goals, you gain what we call readiness score points. And as these points go up, you can see your resiliency go up with it. Plus, the Resilient Life, it's made up of other like-minded members who share their own journeys, as well as to help motivate, challenge, and engage each other. So if you're stuck in a victim mindset and you feel like your only recourse is to quietly quit, then I think you should consider flipping the script. You should stop being part of the fragile masses and join the Resilient Life. Click the link in the description below to find out more. And until next time, prepare, adapt, and overcome.